Oh man, Dan Hooker is injured, which means he's not fighting Justin Gaethje at the upcoming UFC event in March. And that was one that not just myself, but so many people were crazy excited about and crazy scared about, because the amount of damage these two guys were going to do to each other would have just been ridiculous. Now, what happened? What happened to Dan Hooker? Well, he fractured his hand in a sparring session. And I want to talk about what happened in my last fight, talk about how you can avoid these type of injuries. I was training in these gloves like an idiot. An idiot. You don't train in these, but I wanted to get used to how small they were. So I was doing pad work. Look how thin they are. When you look at even a boxing glove, it's like it's nothing. It's nothing. So I was training in these and I caught my brother's hip during pad work. Dan Hooker, he caught his hand in sparring, which means he was probably in 16-ounce gloves. But was he wearing the appropriate gear? Did he have on the 16-ounce gloves with wraps under? Were they wrapped like you were getting ready for a fight, or were they just those ones that you go over top with? Do you have extra padding beneath to make sure you're protected? I don't know all of the equation, but I do know damage is common in training camp, but damage to a hand is just terrible. So I hit my brother's hip with this glove, and the whole thing just right away went, and this was about 1 week out. And all of a sudden I was going, okay, let's finish the session. I'll put on one of these gloves. Went to put that on, like, oh no, I can't. So I just thought, okay, I'll ice later. So I just did the rest of the round with no glove on. Realized, okay, I can't punch with this hand for the next week. Got to the fight, put that glove on, this exact glove, put it on, realized I couldn't make a fist. So we were doing our warm-up backstage, and I was punching off the left arm, hitting a noodle. My brother was holding a noodle in one hand, like a pool noodle, and pad in the other. And I'd be touching that, but I couldn't even close it. So I was kind of going palm fists. Now, there's many people who probably would be going right now, oh, you know, you have a fractured hand, you should just fight. But look at, when you take any damage and you're a little bit less than who you are in the fight, it could lead to you losing. And this is not a sport where somebody like Dan Hooker wants to go in against Justin Gaethje and be less than like 90%. Because we already know the amount of damage, the potential damage that could occur in this type of fight. And it's too dangerous. It's way too dangerous. Even me in my last fight, going in without my left hand, knowing that if I hit, I might really, really damage it. Like, it's finally back to better now, but that's a risk you take. So I'm glad he stepped out. I'm glad he didn't take this fight. I think that's a wise decision, even though all of the fans are probably so heartbroken, because that was going to be a ridiculous fight. Probably one of the craziest fights in UFC history if it went past the first round. And these guys are both so tough, there's a good chance it would. If you guys are at the gym and you're training, you're doing your sparring sessions, you want to make sure that you're not going to damage your hand, you're not going to fracture it. Number one, I've done this before, make sure you don't have old gloves that start having spots in the middle that are getting hit on consistently that don't have proper padding. I've worn a pair of 10-ounce Reyes gloves, 14-ounce Reyes gloves that I used to spar in occasionally. And one time I hit somebody and there's almost no padding. It's like the padding had somehow shifted in the round and I just went boom, right onto the knuckle. Fortunately back then, because my hands were so damaged, I was also wearing 2 hand wraps and a little cushion. A little padded cushion, so I didn't have complete knuckle impact. But your gloves, make sure they're good ones. They're not worn down. Next, make sure you wrap, whether it's just one of those cloth ones or if you're doing the whole thing, the professional style. That will make a big difference. If you're not doing this and then you hurt your hand, that is kind of on you. I'm sure Hooker just happened to catch somebody in a weird position, but he was taking all the necessary precautions, especially this close to a big fight. He was taking all those necessary precautions to keep his hands safe. Once you lose these, it's a hard thing to come back from. And I know that from the last fight. Not having my left hand, not being able to warm up with that hand, be able to go, okay, I'm going to actually practice things that I've been working on the rest of the training camp. it's not a nice feeling. It's really not. So as long as we're safe, as long as we're training properly, not damaging ourselves, hopefully we don't end up like Hooker, and hopefully he has a fast, speedy recovery, and we will see him back in the octagon fairly soon.